And things are moving rather quickly, or they appear to be, at least in terms of public and congressional sentiment regarding impeachment. This is something, as you know, I've been hammering away at for some time, and it feels like between the Corey Lewandowski testimony and then this report, I guess it was now about a little more than a week ago when Adam Schiff was on Meet the Press on Sunday, a week ago Sunday, saying that there was a whistleblower complaint that the Director of National Intelligence refused to hand over. Well, that guy, it's John McGuire. Toby Maguire is the actor, correct? John McGuire is the acting DNI. He will be testifying in front of a House Intelligence Committee publicly on Thursday. He will be meeting with the Senate Intelligence Committee behind closed doors, is my understanding. It's unclear who the whistleblower is. The Trump administration yesterday floated the idea of, well, we'll put out the transcript of the phone call, but not the whistleblower complaint, which leads me to believe that the whistleblower complaint is probably, I mean, they could be lying about putting out the transcript of the phone call, but it leads me to believe that the whistleblower complaint is a little bit more comprehensive than just a secondhand version of a phone call. In the meantime, over the past, 36 hours, more and more details have come out, and it's quite clear that Donald Trump tried to blackmail Ukraine into finding something that he could use against Joe Biden in an election, and used the money that the Congress had appropriated for support to Ukraine as what he was blackmailing with. You're just not going to get the money.
I make deals.
There you go.
Tremendous deals.
And the pieces of this, first of all, I mean, I wouldn't put Rudy Giuliani out there, but here is Rudy Giuliani claiming that, well, now remember, there were stories months ago about Rudy Giuliani heading to Ukraine to dig up this stuff. Now, it's one thing for political operatives to be sent to go dig up dirt on another candidate. I mean, it's a little bit unseemly to do it when you're the president and to sort of like send your personal emissary, because it implies that maybe you're using your influence and leaning on them. But now the implication is gone. It seems to be very, very explicit. So here is Rudy Giuliani, and what they're all trying to do is they know at one point these facts may come out. So what they're trying to do is backfill an explanation for them. And so they're trying to describe what they feel will ultimately come out, but they're going to pre-interpret it. I mean, it's not terribly different than what Bill Barr did with the Mueller report. You can't see it. I'm going to tell you what it says. So by the time this is released, we all know the story. It's an old story, but wait a second. It slightly doesn't say exactly what you had said that first time. But here is Rudy Giuliani still saying something that is rather incredible. He's not addressing his trips to the Ukraine. He's just claiming that he'd been enlisted with just one phone call, because apparently the State Department, they don't have anybody who has any relationship with Ukraine at all. And so Rudy Giuliani's the only person, and maybe they knew that he was being sent there by the president. So they figured, well, we don't have a phone number for anybody.
He speaks Ukrainese.
And so here is Giuliani telling this story on Hannity, because remember now, the danger for either candidate, whoever the Democratic candidate is, they're going to have the same danger. The danger for both these candidates when they run for president is going to be whose base is going to be depressed in terms of turnout. Like, who's not going to be fully maximized? And so it all becomes, how can we maintain that we are above the fray in some fashion?
Did our State Department ask you to go on a mission for them?
They did. I was called
and you were
by
a
the
good citizen, and you went.
The State Department called me and said,
Pause it. Now, I got to say, that was very adept of Hannity to know to ask that question. Because I would have never thought to ask that question. Even like, did the State Department ask you about this?
It was a State Department mission for our security against Ukraine being ripped off and Joe Biden.
Who here who's my biggest lapdog? Pompeo? Okay. Then it was the State Department that sent him. Go.
Did our State Department ask you to go on a mission for them?
They did. I was
and you
called
were
by
a
the
good
State
citizen, and you went.
The State Department called me and said, would I take a call from Mr. Yermak, who's number 2 or 3 to the president-elect, now the president. I was put together with Mr. Yermak. I talked to him. He gave me enormously important facts. I conveyed them all to the State Department. Unlike the media lies, fake news, I wasn't...
Pause it. So let me just see if I understand what the deal is. The State Department says, hey, will you take a call? Not will you initiate a call, but they're going to call you and give you facts and then relate them to us. And the reason why we want you is because you are so familiar with what's going on in Ukraine that you know that this guy who's calling you is the number 2 or 3. He's somewhere, you know that he's sort of important. And that way you are much better positioned to take the call, to get the facts, to relate them to us. Okay. I just want to be clear that I understand.
He gave me enormously important facts. I conveyed them all to the State Department. Unlike the media lies, fake news, I wasn't operating on my own. I was operating at the request of the State Department.
Do a mission for them.
And I have to tell you, John, I knew this back in November.
John or Sean or whatever, I knew this back in November. I don't know what it is that he knew back in November.
Call him John.
I'm not sure if he even knows.
In case it all goes bust, you just call him John.
So here's Giuliani trying to sort of backfill. I don't know exactly what the story they're trying to make here, but here's Donald Trump also trying to do his backfilling, because now it's clear, the reporting is clear that Trump asked Mulvaney, hold off on the $400 million that Congress has appropriated to the Ukraine, and hold off and tell Congress that you're holding off on it because say that the delays were part of an interagency process, but to give them no additional information. That was a pattern which went on for 2 months. So this started in mid-July. The money was due, and this is according to 3 senior administration officials. So somebody is trying to stick the knife into somebody. And I would bet those senior administration officials are probably coming from the vice president's office. Or maybe there's some vestige of somebody who's left, who's upset. I'm trying to think of who that might be. Somebody who's got, what do they call that? A hairy lip is when you get a little upset? Or a mustache? No, that's Bolton. All right, go.
I have 2 questions. The first is your reaction to the Washington Post story about you supposedly asking and withholding or holding the funds and aid for Ukraine. And the second one is you're meeting tomorrow with Venezuela, with leaders of Latin America to talk about Venezuela. Nicolas Maduro said that if the United States changed the policies of Obama, they will meet with you and they would love to have talks. What do you think?
So here's the story, very simply. We're watching Venezuela very closely. As far as withholding funds, those funds were paid. They were fully paid. But my complaint has always been, and I'd withhold again, and I'll continue to withhold until such time as Europe and other nations contribute to Ukraine, because they're not doing it. It's the United States. We're putting up the bulk of the money. And I'm asking, why is that? And I want Europe, and it's always been this, and everybody knows it, every single reporter knows it, everybody in the administration knows that what I want, and I insist on it, is that Europe has to put up money for Ukraine also. Why is it only the United States putting up the money? And by the way, we paid that money. But I always ask, why aren't other countries, in Europe especially, putting up money for Ukraine?
Okay, so just so you understand that the Venezuela stuff, he really wanted to get that out of the way. He didn't care about that. He needed to address this. And his argument is the reason why I withheld the money for 2 months and lied about it to Congress, even though they had appropriated it, was because I was mad that the Europeans haven't paid up, which is why then I just gave the money on September 11th. I never publicly said I withheld the money because of the Europeans, and I gave it. I'm doing that in retrospect because that's the most effective way to do it. And I would withhold again, even though I didn't withhold until I used any of the leverage from the withholding, which of course is no leverage against the Europeans if I don't give the money that Congress has already appropriated. So they have yet to figure out how they're going to answer this question. And I think the answer is just going to be complete stonewalling. However, we will have a better sense on Thursday when McGuire has to go in front of the Congress. And the reason why we'll have a better sense on Thursday when McGuire has to go in front of the Congress is because it now appears that the dam has broken. There have been about 10 more over the past 24 hours, Democrats who have come out publicly for impeachment. The latest are 7 freshman congresspeople. They are, I guess, all they consider themselves national security Democrats. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I have a feeling that means
we're Democrats, but we like killing Yemenis.
That's right. But regardless, they I don't know if they were all they're all vets, I guess, of the military or the nation's defense and intelligence agencies, according to them. They wrote
one of them
an
is a
op-ed.
Megabucks winner,
and one is a Megabucks winner, and they are all more or less so-called frontline Democrats. I think 5 of them beat Republicans in 2018. The other 2 were in districts that could go either way or was dealing with a retirement. So these are supposedly the poster Congress people for why Nancy Pelosi was not pursuing impeachment. And here is Roe Kahana this morning, right? On C-SPAN, on Washington Journal, basically saying that he thinks the train is about to leave the station.
With an op-ed in the Washington Post about this issue of impeachment, these 7 members of the military and intelligence communities before they came to Congress. Where do you think the caucus line is right now?
I saw that late last night, that op-ed, and I said to a friend, that's a game changer. These are extraordinary members of Congress. They have the most credentials when it comes to national security or military issues. They are many of them are in districts that Trump carried. For them to come out and say this justifies an impeachment inquiry really has changed the tenor in our caucus. You had a number of progressives like me who had called for an inquiry. Now you have moderates and people on frontline districts calling for it. I can't think of something more significant than that op-ed.
Significant enough to move the speaker to pursue impeachment investigations?
I would be surprised if she doesn't officially endorse impeachment investigations at this point. Obviously, you'd have to ask her, but given the breadth of support for that in the caucus, that would be my expectation.
Now, the real question is going to be, like I say, when the Director of National Intelligence shows up at the House Intelligence Committee Thursday and either gives them the whistleblower testimony, commits to allowing the whistleblower to testify to the committee, or not. And there is now talk again about Congress's power to hold people in inherent contempt. Up to this point, all of the rebukes by Congress's subpoenas have been pursued in the courts and still awaiting resolution. And it's a very slow process, and this was deliberate on the part of Nancy Pelosi. But Congress also has the ability to say, okay, we're gonna hold you in contempt, and we have the ability to fine you money, or we can put you in our jail that is in our basement. They literally have a jail there, and they can put you in jail in their basement. Be like being put in the dungeon. I imagine there's going to be just fines. And that will be, when that happens, you know this is for real. I tweeted last night at one point, I am looking forward to the columns saying that Nancy Pelosi played this geniusly, lulling Donald Trump into a false sense of security so that he would go and blackmail a country to get them to produce lies for his campaign. And it worked. So take a victory lap, Nancy, and a call for impeachment.
The psychological needs of people for Nancy Pelosi to be good for certain people are deep.
It's not out there yet, but I find it hard to believe it won't be there.
It'll come.
I think it will come. We will check that out.